Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. I'm going to be continuing a look at Band of Brothers Old Breed South Pacific from Worthington Publishing, designed by Dean Halley and Jim Krohn. This is going to be a look at training scenario number 2, King of the Hill. So the situation here is it is on the island of Guadalcanal in August of 1942, west of Lunga Point. The Japanese desired to establish an observation post overlooking the U.S. perimeter at Lunga Point, while the Marines desired to establish an observation post from which they could keep an eye on the Japanese positions at the Mantanacao River. Both sides selected the same hill on the same day at the same time for their observation post. Historical significance: this is a purely fictitious firefight that's used to introduce the rules for hills, mortars, and Japanese grenade dischargers, which I've also heard called knee mortars. Special rules: you will need to know the terrain rules for open ground, jungle, hills, cliffs, and kunai grass. Okay, the U.S. will set up first, and the Japanese will move first. The victory conditions are the control of hexes I3 and I4. If each side controls one of these hexes, it is a draw. So for setup, at start, the U.S. forces consist of 6 1942 squads, 1 mortar weapons team, and 1 machine gun weapons team, and they must set up east of row 35M. For the Japanese, they set up west of row 35 east. They have 5 first-line squads, 2 machine gun weapon teams, and 1 grenade dispenser, or discharger rather, squad. Now, the thing about the grenade discharger is that it was, some of the Japanese squads were equipped with what the Marines called knee mortars, basically grenade launchers that kind of operated like a mortar would. Short tube on the ground. They fire off basically grenades, essentially. So these units operate as kind of a combination of an infantry unit and a mortar unit. So they have some mortar rules that apply to them, as well as being able to conduct regular fire missions as any other infantry squad would be able to do. So the operation range for the Marine Corps here, we have an operations range of 2 to 4, command points 2 for the U.S., and their route edge is the east map edge. For the Japanese, operations range of 3, command points 1, the route edge is west map edge. So if you did not watch the first look video or the first tutorial video, it may be a good idea to go back and look at those. I don't want to spend a lot of time going over things that were discussed in previous videos. Obviously, if you're familiar with the Band of Brothers series, then you probably don't need to watch those videos because you're already familiar, and possibly even more familiar than I am with the system here in Old Breed. So here's a look at the map. So as you can see here, we have our victory hexes. I marked one with a Japanese marker and one with a Marine Corps marker. More so I would know, it's easy to tell where they are, I3 and I4. It's a hill, as you can see. So what's new in this one, after our first tutorial scenario in the previous video, is we have elevation, we have kunai grass, we have cliffs, etc., etc. So easy way to look at it is, in the European games in the system, the elevation gets lighter in color as it goes up. In the Pacific, it's just the opposite. It gets darker as it goes up. So looking at this area around the edge here, this is all level 0, right? Base, ground level. Then these are lines here, which are elevation lines. So this is 0 here. This would be 1. And then this one, if we go here, would be 2. And then this is 3. So this area, as far as I can tell, This is the highest elevation on the map. So this is level 3 elevation. This would be level 2. This would be level 1, because you can see the elevation lines here. We have some cliffs. You can see cliffs here. Cliffs are not passable by units. So, for example, our Marines here, they can't go here. They have to go here and then up. So it's not an easy path. Which the terrain on Guadalcanal was incredibly difficult, and this was true of all the operations in the Solomons. The jungle was thick. There were hills, etc., etc. Very inhospitable terrain that they had to kind of work their way through and fight in. So this is reflective of that. And they do need to go. So this unit here, for example, which is that is a rifle squad. They will have to go down this ridgeline here, and then across to here, and then up. And then in theory, they would be here, and then they can go down again and then back up to get to the victory hacks. That's the path. I also have some units down here as the bottom. The Americans did set up first. I have the conceal markers basically right side up as far as being able to read them. You will notice the units are facing this way. Facing is important in this particular edition of the game. It's optional in Europe. The importance is, this was reading a note in Boardgame Geek from designer Jim Halley. He mentions that the reason it went this way is, or the reason they put facing in and made it mandatory for the Pacific, is that the Japanese doctrine was to be very rigid. And so it was a little easier for American forces to flank Japanese units, because they would face the direction they were told to face. They had orders. They followed those orders, religiously, essentially. Whereas in Europe, if you're facing the Germans, for example, the Germans are very tactically flexible, and they would be kind of situationally aware and would pay attention to flanking attempts and things like that. European armies fought much differently than the Japanese did. So that's kind of where that facing rule comes from. So you'll notice that our Japanese units, and I didn't turn them correctly, they're facing this way. So they're both facing the objectives. One other thing I should mention is the concealment counter. It's a conceal 2. At start in the previous video, I mentioned I put them in conceal 1, which was incorrect, because I wasn't sure. It says when they enter the game, basically they are concealed 2. So they are entering the game. This is only going to really matter until they're moving in line of sight of the American forces, and vice versa. The Americans are concealment 1. The Japanese obviously were very good at setting themselves up in really good cover. They were harder to see. They were much more, I don't want to say at ease, but they were much more accustomed maybe to jungle warfare. They were very good at the kind of sneak attack, infiltration tactics, things like that the American Marine Corps, at least at the beginning of the war, wasn't all that adept at. So this is the setup. And so we're going to begin. There are obviously, the point of this training scenario is to introduce, the mortar fire and also terrain effects. So it's important to understand how the various terrain impacts the game. Now, we did have jungle and open in the first scenario, and that's pretty straightforward. The jungle obviously is still a part of this, but now we have elevation. So line of sight is a little bit more difficult to discern, because you have to worry about how we cross these hills. Obviously, right now, neither side can see the other side, even though there's jungle hexes in here which would hinder it anyway. Basically, you wouldn't be able to see through the jungle hex, which makes sense. But if this was clear, let's just say this was clear terrain, you have elevation here and here that's going to hide some of the Marine units. This is kunai grass. You can see that it's this bright green here. This is level 0. This is level 1. So it's more of a yellowish color. And then obviously you have jungle, and you can see the brown gets darker Like this is base open, then you have slightly darker, then you have even more dark, and this isn't even base. This is level 1. But you can see kunai over here as well. And then so you can kind of see the border here of level 0 kunai, then level 1 kunai, and level 2 kunai. And it gets darker as you move up, which is the opposite of the way things are in the other Band of Brothers games set in Europe, where it's darker at the bottom and gets lighter as you go up. So that's a lot of preamble. And I probably won't do this entire scenario. It's a 4-turn scenario. I probably won't do the whole thing. I probably will only do a turn or two, only because I just want to show the mechanics of how mortars work and kind of talk about how we move through this terrain and things like that. And then we'll get into a full scenario where everything is kind of, built out and available, aside from vehicles. I think I won't do anything in this part of this series with vehicles because I am now strongly considering doing a kind of tactical look at various tactical games to include this one and other games such as Last 100 Yards and Old School Tactical and things like that, so that we can kind of compare and contrast the various systems and talk about, what I like from one versus the other. All three of those systems I like. They're all different, but they all have in my opinion, their strengths and different ways of looking at it. So, it's an interesting thing to look at those games, and also things like, say, Advanced Squad Leader and maybe some other stuff too. So let's get underway here. Okay, so the Japanese move first. So they're going to try to advance on the victory hexes, just as the Americans are. So we have our concealed units here. So let's take this guy right here. There are no decoys in this scenario, so this makes it real straightforward. Now, the Japanese have 1 command point, and the Americans have 2. Now, one of the things command points can do is give you an additional movement point. So that's probably a good use for it here in this first scenario, because the movement is going to take a little time, and we have 4 turns to get to the hill and keep it. So looking at what we have here, if I remove these guys, and obviously I'm not showing you the whole map, I'm trying to zoom in as best I can so you can see everything here on the board, and also see my dice tower for when we start having combat. So our weapons teams only have 4 movement points. Our squads have 5. Now, kunai grass, if we pull this sucker over here, so we find kunai grass, it's right here, right? It's 1.5 movement points for infantry. Okay, but we have a hill. So if you go up in elevation, you add 1 movement point. Okay, so it would cost us 2.5 to go here. It would also cost us 3 to go here because that's jungle. So it's actually cheaper to go here. So if we go, he's got 5, we know that. So this would be 2.5. This would also be 2.5. So let's just do that. We'll mark him used. And he remains concealed because the Americans still can't see him. So we'll stick him there. He's got jungle here. They're hard to see. So at the end of operations, let me actually put the used on top of that. That might be a better idea. So we know he's still concealed. Now we just continue to do the same thing. We have a weapons team here, which has 4 movement points. So they can move, say, 1. This would be 3. This would be 3.5. Plus 1 would be 4.5. So let's use our command point. And we're going to move him up because this is 1 and he's got 3 left. And then to climb up here, that's 2.5, 3 for the jungle hex, but also 1 for going up in elevation. So that's a total of 4. So he needs this extra point. He needs this command point. He's also going to get used. And he's going to get his conceal marker back. We'll put that on there. Now we know that that one has been used. We'll take this squad and we'll go 1, 2, 3, and he'll stop because to go here would need 3 more. To go here, actually no, he climbed on the ridge, so he's used 4. So he's just going to be done. I'm going to drop a conceal marker on him as well, and he's just used, and that's 3, so they're done. So let me cover these guys back up. I'm going to need another marker. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. All right. So they used all 3. They're done. So now we flip it over to the Marines, and the Marines get to move. Now, as I mentioned before, we have this guy right here, and I probably should have just stacked them here. You know, in hindsight, I should have just stacked them there. That would have been a little bit more intelligent on my part. They get 5, so let's say this guy here is going to move. Now, their command range is 2 to 4, so we can move 4 or 2 or 3. We have options. Since we're not, you know, able to see each other yet, it doesn't really matter to me, I don't think. So if we move here, that's 3. This would be 4, 5, so let's just do that. We'll move him there. I'm going to put a used on him, but I'm going to hold off on that for a second because this guy is going to, this is a weapons team. They're going to move here, which would cost 2. And then here, which also costs 2 because they're moving up. So actually, let's put, now he's on level 3 terrain. So this is a machine gun. They're at level 3 terrain. This hill's level 2, so they can see over this hill. This is also level 2, so this is level 1 here in the middle. So we got, this is level 2, level 1, level 2, level 1, level 2, jungle. And then this guy here is in level 2, but he's behind jungle. So now let's talk about line of sight. So this is level 3, okay, as I mentioned. So what I'm checking here is, can this guy see this guy and vice versa, right? So we're at level 3, okay? This is level 2, this is level 1, this is level 2, level 1, level 2, this is still 1, level 2, and level 2. The rule is you can see over, but there's a blind hex equal to 1 less than the distance from the level to the blocking terrain. So this is blocking terrain. It's jungle. It's going to create, because it's 1 level lower, it's going to create 1 blind hex behind it. And he's sitting in that blind hex. So this machine gun cannot see this unit. Therefore, he's going to be done with his move. I'm going to drop his conceal back because he also cannot be seen. I don't think. Because that's level 2. Well, this is level 1 and that's level 2. So he can't see. Well, he's behind this jungle too. Yeah, it works both ways. So I don't think that he can be seen here. So let's drop a used on there. This guy is also used, but I'm going to move this guy to join him. But to do that, he has to go here, which is 3. And then here into clear and up. So that's 2. So both of these units will be here. They are now both concealed and used. So that's 2, and I can stop if I want to. Or I could continue. I have 6 total units I could move. So we have these 2, and then I have the 3 at the bottom. I think I'm going to stop here, which would flip it back to the Japanese because we haven't used everybody. So we don't actually move to turn 2 until everybody's been. So we just kind of flip back to the operations phase, and we continue the operations phase until we get to the point where everybody's done, and then we would move to the other phases and move to turn number 2. Okay, so back to the Japanese, and they would be now able to continue their turn by doing 3 more activations. So I'm going to slide this back because I just noticed I left that off. These are our 2 victory hexes. In fact, I'm just going to remove these. So we know that it's right here in the middle. Kind of looks like a peanut. This is our 2 victory hexes. I'm going to put these here, and we'll flip them as needed. Okay, so back to the business at hand. The Japanese have used their command point, so they must move 3. Okay, we have 4 units left. Actually, we have 5 units left. Yes, so it's going to take them 2 more, operations phases basically to finish out their turn. So we'll start right here. We have another squad. Now it's going to be moving up and into Kunai grass, which is 1.5. So that's 2.5. And to move up here would cost another 3.5, which they don't have. So they could move here, which would be 2.5. And in fact, that's what they will do. And I'll explain why here. So they're going to go here. Now these guys here can traverse through here. We have a weapons team and another squad. So let's take the weapons. Let's take the squad first. This guy is used. Let's just mark him used for now. It says to keep track of it. He's going to move. I'm going to move the squad first because he's going to go through this hex and end here because this is all level 1. So he's going to go from here to here and then to here. So he's going to stop there. He will get marked conceal and used. And now he can move, and he will also get marked used, but he's only moving up to this area here because he doesn't have enough movement to move any further than that. Since they only have 4 movement points, and that's a 2.5 because they're moving into jungle. So we would only have 1.5 left, or rather that's 3 to move into jungle, I think. So this guy, I think I messed that up. So let's back this train up here. We're going to leave him here, mark him used and concealed, and we'll just move both of these guys here. And that would be 3, and that would be the end of their second operations phase of turn 1. We flip back to the Marines. Their range is 2 to 4, so we can do all 3, and I'll probably do. Actually, they have 5 units left, so they're going to do probably 3 of these guys. Okay, so we'll start here. We have a rifle squad and another rifle squad. So we're going to move both of these guys. The question is where to move them, because this guy here, actually he's got jungle, right? No, he can see over this. This is the same level though, so that would block. Okay, so that's good to know. So we're going to move down, which costs nothing for going from higher to lower. So that's just 1. This would be 2. And this would be 3. And then we'll go here and stop, I think. Let me think about this. We were here. And that would be 3. 1, 2, 3. Or I could go here. Let's do that. 1, 2, 5. So that's 5. We're going to move the same. This one the same. That's 2. They stay concealed. They get marked used. And then I'll take my mortar team here. And they're going to go. Actually, I screwed that up. That's not going down. That's going up. So this would be 2, 3. And I'm going to use both command points because I want these guys up here. So that I gave them both an extra movement point so they could get into that jungle hex. The mortar team only has 4. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And they are not in line of sight, so they're going to be concealed and used. That's 3. I will save my last. I have 2 more units to move, and I will move them after the Japanese move their last 2. So we go back to the Japanese, same thing. They're just going to move these guys up. So here we have our squad that is a grenade discharger squad. So this is what that looks like. You can see they have a little, that's what the Marines called the knee mortar. But this is a rifle squad. So they have rifle squad ratings. Their firepower is a little better. They only have a 2 in melee, and they have a range of 6, and they have their grenade launcher, which basically operates the same as a mortar, except the firepower is, the firepower is basically, it's a little bit less than the Marine Corps weapon team or a regular mortar team. So they were here. They're going to move, because they're a squad, they can move 5. So they're going to move here, which will cost them 4, and they'll stop because they don't have an operations point to spend, so they cannot do anything else. They will get marked used. These guys are going to join them. That would cost 4 as well. This is just a regular rifle squad, so I'm going to put them there, and they're just going to stay used as well. The Japanese are now totally used, and we go back to the Marines. We have 2 rifle squads here. They have 5 movement points. If they move here, that costs them 4, so they'll do that. They're both going to move up here. I'll just drop that on there, mark them used, and turn 1 is done because we don't have a rout phase. We don't have a melee phase. We're just going to go right to, flipping it to the next turn via the recovery phase. So in the recovery phase, which we didn't actually see in tutorial 1, but what the recovery phase does basically is it allows you to, you lose a step of suppression. So if you're fully suppressed, you go to light suppression. If you're light suppressed, you go to no suppression. And you remove the used markers, and basically you just start over. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to pause the video, remove my used markers and command point markers, and then we're going to go back and start turn number 2. Okay, on to turn 2. So Japanese still have, obviously, what we would call initiative in some other games, but they move first, basically. So now we have interesting situation for them. This Marine unit can see over this hill. They can see like this hex is blind. This one's blind. These 2 are blind. This one's also blind. So these 3 are blind. They can see this hex. So the Japanese move here, we can do op fire. So that's something to consider, but we do have a, they would lose concealment from moving. So let me think about how I want to approach this. It might be better to do the bottom ones first, but on the other hand, as the Marine player, I would be saying, you know what? As soon as operations phase flips to me, I'm marking this guy op fire, which would then allow him to use his full firepower against these units when they move. If anybody moves here or here, they're visible to this guy. So that is interesting to consider here, because this is a straight shot here. This is level 2. This is also level 2. This, however, is level 1. So that might not be visible to him. I think it would be, though, because he's level 3. So let's just say, for simplicity's sake, that the Japanese are going to start down here. Why not? We need to start moving towards our objective, though. We only have 4 turns. This is now turn 2. So if we take our 2 squads here, one of which is our grenade discharger. If we move here, that's 2.5, or 3 rather. Here would be 4. And they can move up here, and that would be 5. That would reveal them to this guy and this guy. So they would also be subject to opportunity fire, but they could also do their own fire as well, because they would be able to see these guys as well. So let's do that with our grenade discharger unit here. Actually, wait, no, 2.5 or 3. I keep saying 2.5. That's not on Guadalcanal. That's New Britain. So it's 3 in Guadalcanal, according to the jungle rules here. It's 3 with a star, and it says star 2.5 movement points in New Britain scenarios. This is Guadalcanal. It's 3. So 3, 4. Yeah, they can't do it. They can go 3, 4. This would cost 2. That would cost 2. And I could use my command point to make that happen. So let's do that. Let's going to go 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to use our command point. And let's put that back on there for the moment. I'm going to use our command point. Okay, so the intention here is to have these guys assault fire. But once they move into this hex, they're now visible because this is open. They're visible to this guy and this guy. So here we have 2 squads, and here we have a mortar squad. So what we're going to do here is mortar squads can do opportunity fire. So let's opportunity fire with our mortar here. So this is a mortar. Okay, so as soon as that guy moved onto that ridge, he's visible to this mortar team. So they're going to fire. You can see they have a rating of 8 and 6. So since this is opportunity fire and it's not planned opportunity fire, they're going to use the 6. So it's 6 firepower. The range has to be greater than 1. You can't fire into an adjacent hex. That's what that means. Okay, so they're facing the correct way. They are going to fire. They're going to lose their concealment. They're going to fire on this guy. The range is 1, 2, 3, 4. They have line of sight. They're going to fire. So we're going to roll here. So their firepower is a 6. The range is 1, 2, 3, 4, as I mentioned. They have their own column here. Mortar firepower. They have their own column. They are in open terrain. And they're moving in open terrain. So they don't get anything in here as far as an advantage. You can see, like, even if it's considered a cliff, which it has a cliff hex side on it, but there's no modifiers for that. So we go to the situations, and they are moving in open ground. 1 to 4 would be a +4. Actually, for mortar, it's a 0. So this is a situation. Actually, no, it's here, right? Mortar, right. So they do get the advantage. It's 4 or 2. They're 1, 2, 3, 4. So they get the full +4 for this, and they're gonna fire. So their firepower is a 10. Now, if you do roll a 10, it's an automatic miss. So we do need to roll a 9 or less. So let's do this. And we rolled a 10. So they got lucky. The Japanese got lucky there. Okay. So they are really lucky that was a 10, because if that had been anything but a 10, they would have been in deep doo-doo. But they lucked out. Well, since that didn't work, we're going to use our rifle squads here, and we're going to fire as well. I'm going to fire both of these guys at them as well. So their firepower is only a 4, so they get an 8. So we rolled a 6, so that would suppress them. So I'm going to drop a suppression on here. So that's the first one. Now we'll roll the second one, and they rolled a 2. Now is where it gets interesting. They're already suppressed. So the firepower is 8. Now, when you go to fully suppressed, their casualty rating here, you can see, is a 3. Come on, focus. Focus. There we go. So you can see it's a 3. Okay, so the way the rule works is if you can add that value to the die roll and it's less than the firepower, they take a step loss. So 3 + 2 is 5. That's less than the firepower of 8, so they do get reduced. So they are reduced and fully suppressed. They did use the command point, and they're also used. So they got chock full of markers here. Both these guys are used. They lose their concealment as well. Sorry for the lack of focus there. So they are used. They're used, fully suppressed. They also use their command point. So really that was just kind of me wanting to show mortar fire. And I was kind of hoping in a way that they would get to a point where they could actually fire back. We can still try. So I am not going... technically, you roll for a morale check to see if they can continue to operate, but they can't. So they're fully suppressed. They took a step loss. They are also used their command point. That's one of the operations for the Japanese who have to use 3. So we're going to remove our concealment here from this guy. He will go... this is interesting. How do we want to do this? This is level 2, or level 1 rather. So if we go 3, 4, 5, we're still covered here by this jungle hex. We're in the blind spot. Yeah, so they're on level 2. This is level 1. This is 0. Actually, they are visible to this guy. So it looks like we get another opportunity fire here. So we do have 2 here. I think I'm only going to fire 1, actually. And I'll leave the other guy alone for the moment. And the reason is I need to get here. And they got all these guys over here, too. So while it's nice to knock these southern fringe guys out, I also need to make sure I can move my guys to get here. We do have some turns, so we're going to take a crack anyway. So since they're on level 2 here, they can see over, because this is level 1, this is level 0, this is level 1, because we got a line here, crest line. So there's still 1 lower, and since this is level 0, it's lower than this, they can see them, so they're going to fire, and vice versa. So we can do assault fire if they don't get suppressed by this guy. So we will take a crack at this again. So again, the distance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to be a +2 to their firepower of 4. And they rolled a 7, so the Japanese do not get hit. Let me mark them used. Like I said, I was only going to take 1 shot. But now that I missed, I'm going to take 2 shots. I'm going to shoot with both because otherwise they get to shoot us. And he hits a 1. So when you get a 1, that's going... So our firepower is a 6. Again, it's a 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. That's less than 6. So they're going to get reduced. Let me turn them this way. I didn't do that with this guy either. I need to turn them so they're facing the correct way. He's going to get reduced, and he's going to get fully suppressed as well. Now, if you could subtract the second number, so if they had firepower 8 or 9, and you rolled this, and you rolled a 1, and the 7, you could actually eliminate them on one turn. But they are fully suppressed. They are used. They do not have... they are no longer concealed. And that's two used for the Japanese. Now it's kind of safe in a way for these guys to move up. So we're going to move... Let's move this weapons team, which is a machine gun. 3, 4. We'll stop right here. They're going to stay concealed because they're behind a hill. So they are concealed still. And they are used. So that would end the Japanese operation side. Now we go to the American operation side. And we have to use 2. We have 3 units here that have not yet been used. I'm going to mark this guy as op fire. That's my machine gun team. So he's op fire. and I'm going to move these two guys. So we will move, if we move here, it's just straight 3 because we're staying at the same elevation. So we'll do that, 3, then 4, 5, and we'll stop right here. And we're in the shadow of this hill. So we maintain our concealment. And I'm going to do the same with this guy. So 3, 4, 5. They're both concealed. And they're both marked as used. And that is the end of the American operations. So now we go back to the Japanese. Now remember, our machine gunner here, he's at level 3. So he's going to be able to open up on these guys as they come into view. So let's just start down here with this squad. Now if we move here, that's going to cost us 4. So let's just do that. Stays concealed, marked as used. Because I believe that's still, yeah, he's not visible because of the jungle. So he wouldn't be visible even to him. That's 1. We have a squad here and a squad here. We'll move this guy up. Now he becomes visible to the machine gun crew. But he's in jungle, so he's going to get the cover for the terrain. But let's use our op fire. Why not, right? So we do have op fire. We're going to remove our concealment. We have the op fire there. This is a machine gun. So we're using our full firepower of 7. The range is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's moving, so we're going to get a +2. And then for the jungle, we're going to take a -2. So -2 +2, they cancel out. So the firepower stays a 7. So we're going to roll, and we get a 7. So when you get the same number, it's just suppression. So he gets suppressed. He remains in view. Now he can take a morale check because he can go downhill here. So he can take a morale check here. Let me mark this guy as used now. Okay. So he's going to take a morale check. He needs to roll a 7. So we'll take our white die. We'll roll a 1. So that is successful. So he passes his morale check. So he moved here to here. That's 3. He can move downhill 4. And then he's going to stop right there. And we'll mark him as used. Now, it's yeah, in theory, they would have been able to fire at him if I had used a command point. Didn't I use my command points to move there? I think I did. So let me stick those on there as well. All right. So that was, what, 2, I think? I don't have any command points left, so the Japanese are now safe to move up because this guy's fired. I'm pretty sure I used that to move to that jungle hex. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. If I screwed up, I screwed up. This is gone. So now we'll take this guy. He's moving to open, which is free, not free, 1. Then he can move here for 2, 3, 4. And then he can move here. That's 5. Yeah, they are concealed. I think it's conceal 1 now, though. Well, actually, I don't think he is concealed, to be honest, because they have line of sight to him. So and this one doesn't, but this one doesn't. This one doesn't. This one does, though, because he can see over this. That's clear. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he can see center line, center dot to center dot. It's not gonna cross that hill. Crosses through this hex. So they're used. That was 2, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so we have one more to move. This is a weapons team, so that would be 3, 4. He does stay concealed because he's behind the hill. I think it's conceal 1 though. Once they move, I might have been messing this up. It really hasn't been much of a factor yet, because I've done fire on people that are moving, so they automatically have lost their concealment anyway. All right, so that ends the Japanese phase, operations phase again, but the Americans are all used. So we go back to the Japanese phase one last time. They can only move 1 because that's all they have, so this will cost them 3. And then they'll move down here as well. And that ends the turn. Now, route check. We do have to check for route because these guys are in view of this unit and this unit. And these guys are also in view. So they, again, from the first scenario, sorry, trying to gather my thoughts here. I was looking for the conditions, so I wanted to read the conditions again. So the conditions where you have to check for routing are they're in the same hex and location as an enemy unit, which isn't true. They are adjacent to an enemy unit, not in melee, not. They are not in beneficial terrain and are within 5 hexes of an enemy unit not in melee whose line of sight is not hindered. So, looking at what rule is that? 6.2. Beneficial terrain. If the terrain in a unit's hex lowers the firepower of direct fire, the unit's in beneficial terrain. They're in open. Both of these guys are in open. So they need to take a morale check. And I think what's going to happen is, unless they have the S, they do have the S. So because they have the S for Sai Shin, and let me pull up the Sai Shin rules here. So we go to the back, because it's in the back. Here. Sai Shin. So they only check for route if in the same hex as an enemy unit. So this unit is Sai Shin, and the other unit is also Sai Shin. So neither unit has to check for route. Okay, that's one of the benefits of the Japanese, is their fanaticism and devotion makes them much harder to make them run. They didn't run. They fought to the death. They were tough cookies, as any Marine who fought in the Pacific in the Second World War would undoubtedly tell you. So that ends. We don't have any melee, so that's going to end it. We're going to go back to the recovery phase, and I'm going to pull all my markers. These guys will both move up to light suppression, and everybody's used markers come off, and we're ready to start turn number 3. So let's do that. I am going to pause again while I do that. Okay, on to turn 3. I wanted to mention one thing real quick. Conceal markers for the Japanese. When they're at conceal 2, as soon as they leave their starting hex, they become conceal 1, even if they're, hidden from line of sight. They never go back to conceal 2. So I probably left them at conceal 2 a couple times in previous turns when I shouldn't have. So just remember, I'm noting this as a correction now. They go to conceal 1 as soon as they move. So the ones that are hidden from American view are under conceal 1 now. That's correct. The Americans only have 1 unit that is not in line of sight to the enemy at the moment. We do go to turn 3. The 1 unit in here that was lightly suppressed, they are now unsuppressed. These 2 guys that were fully suppressed are now only suppressed. They're also reduced, however. So that is going to be an issue. So let's try and do something with this grenade discharger, because we haven't really seen that. And that was one of the reasons for doing this particular scenario. Training scenario 2 was to see how that unit operates. It operates basically like an infantry unit, except it uses the mortar column on the player aid card when firing. So the first thing we're going to do, the Japanese still move first, so they're going to fire. But to do so, they have to check for morale because they are suppressed. So the morale here is a 6. So let's roll. And they get a 7, so they fail the morale check, which means they get marked used because they were going to try to fire. So now we have this guy here. We also have these guys up here. So let's do this. We have to use 3. We have 2 units right here. So we're going to move this guy up here on the hill. Right? So he can do that. It costs 4. But by doing so, he's not concealed, and he's now adjacent to these 2 units right here. So this is going to be kind of bad news for him, because if we look at our card here, now this is jungle, so he does have the benefit of the -2 for being in jungle. Okay, but the situation, adjacency, and moving in open ground, so it says combine these with the best terrain modifier. So the adjacent's a +3, which is nice, but we're not going to get that. We're going to get the adjacent 1 to 4. You're going to get a +4. So they're going to get a +4 on their firepower, and obviously they are going to attack opportunity fire. It would be foolish not to use opportunity fire here. Sorry, I was out of focus again after that. But so they're going to lose concealment because they're going to fire. They're both going to fire. All right, we might as well. If this somehow comes out unscathed, they'll fire. They might fire at these guys. The point is they are now in this hex, which is one of the victory hexes. So let's roll for the Americans. So we do have 4, but we're going to use 3 because they're it's on the fly op fire. It's not, not planned op fire. So 3 plus 4 is 7, -2 is 5. So, and we rolled a 10, which is an automatic miss. So that's 1 miss. Now we'll roll for the other one, and we get a 4. So that's going to suppress them. So they are suppressed, which means they'll have to take a morale check. Our 2 Americans are used. And so now we'll roll for the Japanese for suppression to see... well, they actually can't assault fire after they've been suppressed, I believe. At least according to what I read in the rule here. If I go back to my rule book, and it says, op fire that results in suppression requires the moving unit to pass an immediate morale check, even if it passed one at the start of the move, which it did effectively because it's not suppressed, so you get the automatic pass at the beginning here. Or its move immediately ends and it is marked as used. It does not... Oh. They can fire. They can. Because they did pass the morale check. So they do get to do their assault fire, I guess, at the Americans. I think that's what that means. Again, experts, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. So we're going to fire back. So... they're adjacent. They're in. Actually, they're downhill. I just realized that they're uphill from them. So that uphill fire, I might have to change this because they only beat the roll by 1. Uphill fire from an infantry is a -1. So it would have been the same, which still results in suppression. So that's okay. But they're firing from a higher elevation to a lower elevation. So they're going to get a +1. They're also adjacent, so they're going to get a +3. So they're getting a +4 on their roll. Okay, so their firepower, proficient firepower, is a 3. They're getting a +4 because if we look at the terrain and situation chart, the Marines are in open terrain, so they're not getting any benefit from that. But we are firing we're firing at a lower elevation, so they get a +1. And then down here in situations, they're adjacent, so it's a +3. So they're going to have a +4 to their 3, which would be a 7. Now, if I use my command point, I can make that an 8. But in this instance, I think as the Japanese player, I'm going to hang on to that command point, and we're just going to roll with our 7. So we rolled a 6. That will suppress both of these units because fire affects all infantry units in a hex. So you don't have to, in some tactical games, you have to designate a target. That's not the case. You're firing on the hex. The hexes in this game, I believe, are 40 meters-ish in size. So in theory, you're just dropping fire on both, everything in there. You're spraying the whole hex, I guess, essentially. They get marked as used as well. That is 2 of the activations for the Japanese. We move on to a third unit. So let's move our weapons team up as well. This will cost their entire move. That is 4 movement points to move there. They will also lose their concealment, and they're going to assault fire as well. Or I can op fire with my machine gun here, which might not be a bad idea. I could have done that before. I could also fire with these guys at these units. But I might save that for my phase, and that's what I'm going to do. Because I can use my full firepower if I do it that way. So they're going to move up here. Now they're going to fire. So they have to pick who are they firing at. They should fire at this guy, even though it's uphill. They're definitely within range. It's uphill, essentially, but they can see it. So their firepower is a 7. They're firing uphill. He's in open terrain, so he's not getting any bonus that. They're not adjacent, so it's basically just a flat 7. But it's going to be a 6. Actually, it's going to be a 5 because they use their proficient firepower, which is a 6. -1 for going uphill is a 5. So they're firing at a 5 here. And they get a 6, so no effect. So they just get marked used, which is already the case. And that ends the Japanese operations phase for this particular round. First thing I'm going to do is they're going to fire. They're going to fire here at this hex. So we have 7. It's downhill, so they get a +1, which gives them a firepower of 8. Okay, so it's 8. They rolled a 3. Okay, so this is going to result in reduction for both, because you can see that this guy is a 3. This one's also a 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. That's less than the firepower of 8 there. So one thing I'd like to mention at this point that I have not mentioned yet is that there's a spreadsheet that was created, and it's on Boardgame Geek. And I'm drawing a blank right now on the name of the guy who did it. It's Rich something. I'm sorry. I apologize. I would have to look. I don't actually have it up in front of me at the moment. But it lets you basically, it's like a calculator, and it shows you what you get when you roll a certain value with firepower. So the firepower of 8 and a roll of 3, that's a difference of 5, which is enough to actually reduce both of these units and fully suppress them as well. So they are both fully suppressed and used. A machine gun is now used, and that is the benefit of doing something like that, as you can see. So that's one of my activations. Now, the next thing I would like to try to do here is a little bit risky, but I want to take this hill. So we are going to go, well, let's see if we can, how can we do this? If we go down here, this will cost us 3. And then this would be 1 plus 1 is 2. So I can get to this hex, it would be 5. The problem is I'm going to be susceptible to opportunity fire from here and here if I do that. But let's do it anyway. So we're going to move our first unit. So this would be second command here. So these guys are going to fire at them because, well, should they wait? Because if they wait for him to move up here and fire then, you get the adjacency bonus, but you get the uphill negative, but it's also open terrain as opposed to jungle terrain, which gives a -2. Then their proficient firepower is only a 3. So 3 -1 for uphill would be 2. If they fire here, they're also moving. So moving would give them a +4. So here would be, they're here. They're here and moving, so they would get a +4 and a 3, which is a 7. -2 is a 5. And if they wait till they're here, they get a 3. Uphill would be -1, would be 2, +4 is a 6. So that's probably the way they should go. So they're going to go here, they're going to fire, and they're both going to fire, maybe. But we're going to fire first here. So firepower is a 6. They roll a 2. So a 2, and they're +4 here. Okay, so they are reduced and fully suppressed because they have a 4. So the firepower of 6, and you add the 4 to the 2, it's 6, which is the same. So it has to be less than or equal. It's equal. So they are fully suppressed and reduced. And this is the problem that you have when trying to advance here. So they will roll for their morale check. If they get a 2, we can assault fire back. They get a 1, it means they can fire back. So they're going to fire back. So their firepower here is only a 2. Okay, so chances are good we're not going to really do anything because I'd have to roll a 1 again or something like that. But we'll take a crack at it. And they rolled a 7, so no effect. But they do get marked used. And the first unit here gets marked as used. They are no longer concealed. And so now we'll do the same thing with this unit. He's going to go up the hill too. And the other unit in this hex will opportunity fire. So we're going to do the same thing. It's a 6. And we rolled a 9, so no effect. So now he's going to fire at that with assault fire. So their firepower is a 3. It's downhill, you get a +1. So it's a 4. They're in open terrain, so no terrain benefit for them. So it's just a 4. Rolled an 8, no dice. So they're used because they fired opportunity fire. These guys are used, and that's the end of the Japanese, because they did do, did I do 4 there? I might have done 4 there. I think I did. Oh well, I'm going to let it fly. Obviously that's wrong because they only had 3 opportunity or 3 operations, and I did 4, it looks like, so I screwed that up. But now we'll go back to the Americans. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. That was the American phase, so they're good. They're actually good. So that was 2 activations for the Americans. I'm going to put an op fire on that guy, which would be 3, and we are going to be done. Flip it back to the Japanese. So they have a weapons team, machine gun, and they have 1 squad left that they have not used. So if the weapons team moves up the hill to here, they are no longer concealed. They are visible to this guy who will fire at them. They will fire back if they can. So we have opportunity fire here. This is a mortar crew. So it's an 8 because they're marked for opportunity fire. The range is only 1, 2, 3, 4, which doesn't really matter because they have basically unlimited range as a mortar team. They have line of sight, so this is not directed fire. They can see him without any help. So they're going to fire. They are in jungle, so they'll get a +2 for the terrain, or -2 rather, on the firepower. So mortar firepower is -2. So our 8 becomes a 6. They did move. The range is only, what did I say it was? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they only get a +2 there. So the +2 for the jungle -2, the range +2 cancel out. It's a straight 8. Rolled a 7, so that will suppress them. So now they can roll against their morale of 7. And they succeeded, so now they can assault fire back, which of course they will. Their firepower is a 6. And the range doesn't matter. The mortar team is in open terrain. So the elevation is the same. And they rolled a 9, which is nothing. So they are suppressed and used. And now we'll move our last unit for the Japanese. Move here. So down, it's downhill. It's 3 to move there. There are 2 units already here. It would cost 4 to move here. Let me move this back. So let's move here for 1, and then here would be 3, so that's 4. And then downhill would be 5. And then we're going to use our command. Well, we can't. It wouldn't matter. But they're not concealed because they're adjacent, but they will fire at these guys. So we're firing uphill. It's assault fire. So they use proficient firepower. It's going to be a 3. It's going to end up being a 1. They don't get any terrain benefit aside from the uphill. So they need to roll a 1. And they rolled a 2, which would normally be a great roll, but in this case, not so much. So we'll do that. I could have done final op fire, I guess, from these guys, which I probably should have. So I guess let me retroactively do that because that would have been what I should do. So we'll use the top guy for final op fire. So he's firing with his proficient, which is 3. He's downhill, so he's going to get a +1. They're also moving and adjacent, but only the moving will matter because the movements are better. It's a +4, so it's going to be an 8, actually. So maybe I will re-roll that since they're probably going to take damage here. Oh, we rolled an 8, so that suppresses them. So they would have had to roll for morale check, and we'll use their 2 for the morale check. How about that? That seems fair. Now we'll roll because they passed the morale check. Now we'll roll for the attack, and it's a 5, which is still a miss. So no harm, no foul. Everybody stays used. The American phase is back, so here. Maybe we should try to take this guy out. So let's fire. They didn't move. Oh, actually, they have to do something. They have to do something. So let's roll for our morale check. They need a 6, and they get a 2, so they're good. So they're going to move here for 4. So it's uphill and into jungle. Yeah, it's uphill and into jungle, and they're actually now, because of the difference in the level, because they're at level, actually they moved down, so they're at level 0 again. They're actually hidden from this guy, so he can't shoot at them. So we'll mark them used, and now we go back to the Americans, and they finish their turn. So let's see, we've got these 2 here. If we move here. Oh, I forgot about the whole final op fire thing. It should have been a -2 on their roll, and I don't remember what I rolled now. So I did forget again. Like I said, I tend to forget stuff. So they're going to move here, and then they're going to fire at this guy. So, but they can do final opportunity fire first, so they might as well, assuming they can pass their morale check. So we'll roll for that. They roll a 10, they don't pass the morale check. So they're going to fire here. So we'll do assault fire. I moved them both, so they're both being activated essentially. So we'll do the assault fire for 1 first. So the range is 1, 2, 3, 4. So straight across, they don't get any terrain benefit because they are in open. So it's a range of 4, which is within parameters. They get a firepower of 3. So it's basically just they need to roll a 3. So I'm going to roll it, and they rolled a 9, which is a miss. So first one misses, second one also misses. So Drop a used on there. And that ends things unless we wanted to try. I could try final op fire with these two, but with them being, I mean, I guess they could do it. So let's do final. This is all kind of out of order, and I apologize. I get discombobulated a little bit. But we'll do final opportunity fire for this guy right here, firing at them. Why not? Because they moved in there. So it'd be a firepower of 4, -2 for the terrain. So it's a 2. So it's unlikely to do anything. But we'll do it anyway. It's a 4, so it was nothing. Big old nothing burger. All right, so that ends turn number 3. Okay, so we're at the point now where, things are a little interesting. But this video has gotten extremely long. So I'm kind of debating whether or not it's worth it to do the last turn, but I guess I will. Yeah, why not, right? So we're going to pause here. I'll pull all the markers off. All the suppression will go away except for the full suppression, which will become light suppression. Okay, on to the 4th and final turn. So, Japanese go first. These guys are both suppressed. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to take this reduced, well, they're both reduced actually, but I'm going to try to take the reduced rifle squad here, activate them and move them here. Reason being, I'm going to try to move this guy up so that we can have, because I'm expecting these Americans to assault, right? Now, these two here will assault here. So those are going to be my 3 activations for the Japanese. We're going to take this guy here and activate him, or try to move him out. If that's successful, then on my next one, I'll move this guy in. And then these two will move into here with these Americans. So let's get this a move in here. So we need to roll. We need to roll a 7 or less. We rolled a 3. So that's successful. It's going to move there. He remains suppressed. And he is used. And I forgot to do a route check for this guy, actually. Forgot to do the route check for that guy. So let's just pretend he passed the route check because I forgot to check it because that marker was under the other one. Even though I flipped it, I forgot to check for the route check. So I apologize. All these Japanese units have Sai-Shen except for the weapons team here. So none of them had to do a check for routing because they weren't in the same hex as an American. Okay, so that's one of their activations. We'll take these 2 guys and we'll move them in here for melee. So now we come to these guys moving in. So the question you might have is, can I opportunity fire these guys because they're moving into melee? The answer to that is yes. It's actually an exception to the rule that you can't fire at a unit. Well, basically, it's part of the, it's right here in Opportunity Fire 9. I'm probably not going to explain it well, so I'll just read it. Op fire may be conducted at a moving unit in the hex in which it began the turn if the first hex it enters places it in melee. It is subject to all the modifiers that it normally would be, including possibly moving in open ground, which would be the case in this example. But they need to do it because they must take these hexes. This is turn 4. They have to try this. So we're going to do this unit first, right? These will be our 2nd and 3rd activations for these 2 guys. Could also do it here, but the plan is to move this guy in there as a defender because these Marines are going to assault this one. So we're going to end up with melee at the end that's going to ultimately determine who wins this game, right? So we're going to take these 2 and they're going to move in. So we're going to try it with this guy first. So he's going to move in there. So we're going to opportunity fire. Well, opportunity fire with the guy who's unsuppressed first. Why not? He's going to use his 3. He's firing downhill, so he gets a +1. That's the terrain. He's moving, and he's within open ground, so they're going to be a +4. So this is going to be really tough on them because they're going to get an 8 for firepower. So we're going to roll here, and we rolled a 3. So That is going to fully suppress them and reduce them. So I'll do it with the bottom guy here. So he's fully suppressed and reduced. Now, to continue his move, he's going to have to pass this. He's going to have to roll a 4 or lower. Rolled a 9, so he cannot get into that hex for close combat. So now we'll roll for the other one. He gets marked used. We will do the same thing with this guy, assuming he passes his check. And he rolled a 6, so he does. So now he's going to opportunity fire as well. And so he has the same well, he's a 4 too because he's reduced. So it's 2 plus 1 plus 4 is 7. 8. So no effect. So this guy is able to move into melee. And we'll mark him used. And this guy is also used. And that's all 3 for the Japanese. So their move is done. So now I have 4 possible moves I can do for the Americans, so let's take advantage of that. So first of all, we're going to try to do these guys moving up into here. So we have 2 suppressed guys here who can do opportunity fire. This one would have to be final opportunity fire, but they are firing into an open hex. They are firing same level. So they would have to pass a morale check. So their morale is a 6. They rolled an 8, so they fail. Now we'll try with this guy. Same thing. Their morale is a 6, I believe. 7. Okay. They rolled a 10, so they also fail. So that allows these guys to then move in here. Okay, now we'll do it again with this one. Now for him, it's final opportunity fire. So it's going to, even if he passes it, it's not going to be great. He rolled a 10, so no. And then the other one rolls a 9, so no. So both of these guys move in and are now in position for melee at the end of this turn. Now we have this third one here. We have up to 2 more moves we can make. Let's place our machine gunner. He can see this guy. So let's fire at him. Instead of putting opportunity fire, let's just fire at him. Because he can see him. He is in jungle. So the range doesn't matter. He's in jungle, so it's going to be a -2. So he's going to use his 7. -2 is 5. Let's roll the die. We rolled a 10, so that's an automatic miss, even if it had been a hit, which it isn't. We'll just mark him as used. That's 3. Now we'll have our mortar team fire at them as well. So again, it's going to be, they're in open, so it's going to be 8 -2 is 6. They did not move. You know what? Let's put an opportunity fire on our mortar team. That's 4. That'll be everybody I'm doing this turn. We go back to the Japanese. We're going to try to move this guy in here. So even though they're used, they could do final opportunity fire on him to try and prevent this from happening. So they will do that. Now it's a 3. They're going to have a -2, which is a 1, +1 for the elevation, plus they're moving. So 3 -2 is 1, +1 is 2, +4 is 6. Roll the 4, so that is going to suppress them. And so now to continue, he needs to try to roll higher or below a set. So he does successfully do that, but let's do the other opportunity fire on him. And that's a 3. And a 3 + 3 is 6, and the firepower is 6. So he's going to end up being fully suppressed and reduced. So now he can still try to move up. So we need to roll a 4 now. Let's try with the white dice. Roll the 3. So he can do this, but it's going to be kind of dicey. So we have a big stack here. And he's used as well. So that's 1. Let's have our machine gun fire. and our mortar team, I guess. I guess we'll do that. So it's 7. They're in open terrain, I believe. Yep. So I probably should have fired at him, but I didn't. So now they're going to take the opportunity to do so. So 7. They rolled a 5, so that is going to suppress these guys. We'll mark this guy used. That is 2. And so let's see. Well, we're going to move this guy. We're going to try to move this guy and get him into. Well, let's actually move this guy. So that would be 1. Now, as soon as he's moved, they can try op fire. They are suppressed, so we do have to roll a 6. We did. So they're going to op fire now. So they get the fire with the full firepower, which is 8. The range is short, so they're going to get the +4. Or they're going to, yeah, it's 8. The range is only 3. So they're going to get a +4 because he's moving. So this could be bad. So it's a what, 12? And they rolled a 4, 8. Their casualty ratings are 3. He's been eliminated. So that's how elimination works. I mean, that was a dumb move, but it is what it is, right? So that was actually their 3rd move, I believe, for this turn. So we go back to the Marines. Let's have these 2 Marines. These 2 Marines are going to shoot at this guy. Why not? So it's 4. The range is 4. So no, and they're in jungle, so it's a -2. So it's really a 2. So actually, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's mark them both with op fire. And pass it back to the Japanese. And, you know, that actually they can't even see him because they're at below. Now he can't move here because there's a cliff here. So the only places he can go are here or here. If he moves here, he's going to be moving into open, and we have 2 units with op fire here, so that's bad. So what they're going to do instead is just move them here. Mark them used, just to protect them. I mean, I don't see the point in sacrificing the unit, which is what would probably happen if we moved here. So ultimately, it's all about the melee at this point. So that will end this, the operations phase. We'll go to the route phase and then the melee phase. So route phase now, okay, again, just to go over what the route phase involves and qualifying for route, they are in the same hex and location as an enemy unit. They are. We do have several in that situation. They're adjacent to an enemy unit, that's not in melee. They don't have that. No one has that. They're not in beneficial terrain and are within 5 hexes of an enemy unit, not in melee, whose line of sight's not hindered. That would be the case here. And here as well. But they're Sai Shin, so they're good to go. So basically, they're Sai Shin, they're good. The other ones, though, so let's start here. Okay, let's unpack this one. So this guy is fully suppressed, and he's in a unit with Americans. So they have to check for routing. Okay. So they roll a 7, which fails. And because the rule is this: units that fail a route phase morale check while in melee will be eliminated unless another friendly unit remains in melee, because they'd be moving adjacent to an enemy unit not in melee as soon as they left the hex. So there is another Japanese unit in here down at the bottom, but they do have to route. So they would route towards their own map edge and away from enemy units. So they could go, They could go here would be 1, and then here would be 4. That's okay. So they're good. They're good here. So they have to route out of that hex. So now let's do the other Japanese, because you have to do all the Japanese units first because they move first. And another fail. So they also have to route. But they're gonna be eliminated because as soon as they move, they'd be adjacent to an enemy unit that is not in melee because these guys are no longer in melee. So they get eliminated. Okay, so let's continue checking. So we'll do this guy next. So he's now adjacent to some units that are not in melee, but he's Sai Shen. He's got the little S on him, so he is okay, doesn't have to move. So now we have this guy here who is not suppressed, so he would automatically pass his morale check, so we don't have to check for him. So now we have to do the Americans. Okay, so, well, here we have another one. He's fully suppressed, but he's also Sai Shen, so he doesn't have to run. He already ran, so that's good. Now we have to do the Americans. This guy would have to check, so we can do that. That's pretty easy. We rolled a 9, so he would fail. He would have to route, so let's route. They would route this way, so they would go 1, 2, and they would be fine because they'd be behind this ridge line. We can remove these op fire markers. So then we would just check this guy down here. And that is needs a 6. Rolled a 2, so he passes. Okay, so now we're ready for our melee phase, and we only have one to do. And it's this one right here. So we have one Japanese with a melee rating of 3. So it's kind of hard to see, but it's right there. It's a 3. And the American units, one of them has they both have ratings of 4. So it's a 4. Everybody gets 2 rolls. That's how it works. We'll do the Japanese first. They work, it's kind of simultaneous essentially. So you don't apply any losses until after everybody rolls. So the Japanese rolled an 8 and a 9, so that's going to do nothing. And so now the Americans will roll. So they both have 4s. 5 and 5 is nothing for the first one. The second one gets a 3 and a 0. So the 3 would be a hit and would reduce the one Japanese unit. But what's going to end up happening is they're going to stay in melee. And since this is the last turn of the game, the Americans would win this hex. And the other hex would be, undetermined, essentially. So that would be a draw because nobody controls both hexes. If each side controls one of the hexes, it's a draw. So we have one hex controlled by one, and the other one is still in melee. Oh, actually, neither side actually both sides had their control points. So let's re-roll this. So we know the Japanese failed their first. Let's roll it again. They got a 7 and a 3, so that would reduce one of the Americans. Let's just put this back. Okay. So that's going to reduce one of the Americans, and they used their command point. So we'll put that on there. Now we'll re-roll for the first American unit. They get a 7 and a 2, so that would be 1. So that would actually end up eliminating this unit. So at the end of the day, what we end up with is the Americans one would be reduced. That one's already reduced. So we could just eliminate them, but we'll take the hit to this guy. So they're both reduced, and they did have to use one of their 2 command points, but they win the victory hex, so they actually win the game. So they control both victory hexes, and the U.S. wins the game. So that will do it. That wraps this one up. I know I screwed stuff up. I know I did, and I'm sure people will let me know, and I appreciate the clarifications where necessary. Some of it was just me forgetting things, and that happens all the time, and I apologize. But hopefully you got the gist of how the game works, and look in the comments for any corrections, clarifications, etc. that may come up as other people watch and other people who know the system better than I do, maybe. Or just remind me. I know I messed up some stuff and actually remembered later. But hopefully you get an idea of how the system works. This is still mostly infantry, obviously. We did see some terrain effects. We did see how mortars work, etc., etc. I may do a full scenario playthrough. I might save that for my tactical month in the future. I have not decided that yet. We'll see how things go. But that's going to do it for this video. So thank you as always for watching. If you did stick it out for this really long video, this is probably one of the longest I've ever done. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. I hope you found it useful. So until next time, my name is Joe. This is Hexed Encountered. And as always, I wish you guys much happy gaming.